the events I've been to have been house shows. I went to a lot of WWF house shows in my youth. I remember the first one I went to was in '91, and I was really young. But I do remember Andre the Giant did a guest spot at the show, and that was really cool. Let's see what else. I was at an event in '92 where the main event was Randy Savage versus Jake Roberts, and it was one of the first times Shawn Michaels worked singles. With this recent heel turn after he'd thrown Marty through the window and everything. I remember he didn't even have the Sexy Boy theme yet. I remember that. Because I remember his music played and I had no idea who it was coming out because I didn't know what the music was. And it was not the Sexy Boy theme. I remember he wrestled Jimmy Powers. Yeah, that was... don't ask me why I remember that, but I remember El Matador wrestled Ted DiBiase. I remember Brett wrestled the Mountie. So yeah, I remember that '92 event pretty vividly. I'm not sure why, but because the '91 event, really the only thing I remember is Andre. He was in somebody's corner. I couldn't even tell you who he was. Who he was in the corner. Maybe the Bushwhackers, because I remember they did that in '91. But let's see what else. I was at an event in '96 where the main event was Undertaker and Shawn Michaels versus Goldust and Mankind in a steel cage. I went to a WCW event that had, I remember Sting was on it. He wasn't doing the Crow at this point, so it must have been in the mid-90s at some point. I don't even think, I think the NWO had either just started or I think the Outsiders had been on TV. I'm not sure. I don't know. But I was at a WCW event and Sting was there, so that was cool. Never been to a TV show. I've never actually been to a Raw or a SmackDown or a Nitro or anything like that. Impact, whatever. I've never actually been on a TV show. Maybe that's something I should consider. They've done Raw quite a few times up in DC, but it's always been points where I'm like, no, I'm good. He's like, no, thank you. I can manage. I have been. The first pay-per-view I ever went to was SummerSlam 2005. Which was main evented by Hogan and Michaels and had the ladder match between Eddie and Ray and Undertaker and Orton 2 and Jericho and Cena for the title and Batista and JBL for the title. So and Edge and Matt Hardy, that horrible fucking match that really confused us. Yeah, but that was a great show to go to. I really enjoyed that, especially for the Hogan-Michaels match, which unfortunately has a dubious reputation now. But being there in the crowd for that match was pretty amazing. And then WrestleMania 29, I was there, obviously. I should also mention, I was at a TNA house show back in 2008. Main event was Samoa Joe versus Abyss. So this was while Samoa Joe was champion. I was out of town. I was in North Carolina at the time, and TNA was holding a show down there. And I was like, why not? Go see TNA. Back when that seemed like a good idea. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah, WrestleMania 29 weekend. I went to WrestleMania 29, obviously, and that was a great experience, even though the show itself was not that great. Just being there was a pretty awesome experience. But I also went to Ring of Honor Super Card of Honor 7 that same weekend, and that was awesome. That was a fantastic show. I really liked that, and being there with that really rabid, diehard New York crowd, really going nuts for a Ring of Honor event. It was pretty exciting. I do remember how much I enjoyed that Lethal Elgin Contenders match. Just really good stuff. So yeah, I think that's all the events I've been to. I don't go to wrestling shows often, unfortunately. Most of the ones I have been to have been non-televised house shows. But when I do go, I typically have a good time. So, yeah. I love the Chucky character. I think he's really funny and entertaining. And when they eventually introduced his wife, played by Jennifer Tilly, the bride of Chucky, what was that character's name? Tiffany, I think. I thought she was really funny, and I thought they played off of each other really well. I'm not a big fan of the movies, though. Again, it's one of those weird things. I love the character, but it's just the movies themselves just never really clicked with me. I guess my inclination is just kind of look at them as comedies rather than actual horror movies. And to me, they just don't work as horror movies because it's so ridiculous that there's a killer doll that nobody seems to be able to overpower or is always tricked by or whatever. And I've seen all of them from the first one, Deceit of Chucky. I have not seen the new one, Curse of Chucky, which I've heard is really good. But I haven't seen that one, so I can't really comment on it. But the first one is probably the best of the bunch, and they actually do. It has some legitimate atmosphere to it, and Chucky is entertaining. But at the end of the day, I mean, that climax was pretty ridiculous. It was pretty absurd. It was like, really, that damn thing just won't die. 2 was pretty ridiculous, especially with the foster parents that just would not get the fucking... It's like, how do you not get it? That just so many dumb authority figures in this movie. 3, they were in the military school. It was like, okay, they're just running out of ideas at this point. Then you got Bride of Chucky, which is probably the second best behind the original. Mainly just for Chucky and Tiffany bantering back and forth, basically. And then you got Seed of Chucky, which was completely awful and just really, really bad. But so overall, I mean, I wouldn't rank them among my favorite horror or slasher movies or anything, but I will say that the character of Chucky is entertaining, and eventually when they brought her in, Tiffany was also entertaining. So at least, you know, while the movies themselves might not be that great, at least they were centered around very entertaining characters. Never say never, but I doubt it. In WWE's case, they're typically looking for guys who are younger and are drafting their talents typically, you know, late 20s, even younger than that even. AJ's obviously, I think he's in his mid-30s at this point, so I don't think they're going to be giving him too many calls. And as for TNA, I think things just went so south there that I just don't see AJ going back there. But again, never say never. It's a shame because AJ's a talented guy, and you know, he deserves a bigger platform to be on. Although him working for New Japan is a pretty big platform all its own, and I look forward to seeing him again in Wrestle Kingdom 9. That's one of the main reasons I want to see the show. It's like, oh, I get to see AJ again. That's great. So, but as for him going to WWE or TNA again, not impossible, but I doubt it. Music is one thing where I really am like an old fogey. Today's music just doesn't do it for me. For one thing, everything feels like it's auto-tuned now, and I fucking hate auto-tune. It makes you sound like a goddamn robot. I hate all the pop divas. I hate almost anything that gets popular with the youth nowadays. I just fucking hate the music. I can't stand it. The only one I can kind of tolerate is Lady Gaga, and that's whenever she ventures outside of pop. Like the jazz album she did with Tony Bennett, that was great. I enjoyed that. The Christmas special she did with the Muppets last year, she did a duet with Elton John. That was fantastic. It's like, oh wow, this one actually has talent. But you know, you get girls out there like Katy Perry who makes me so happy that I have eyes, but makes me so sad that I have ears. Her music is awful, but damn is she nice to look at. But the problem is when I'm listening to the music, I can't see her. So that's the problem. That's where everything kind of falls apart. Yeah, so much of today's music is just awful. And it's, you know, I kind of get into that my old fogey stage where I'm like, you know, just give me my Frank Sinatras, my Bing Crosbys, my Louis Armstrongs, and, you know, Elvis, the Beatles, the Doors, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, my favorite band ever, by the way, Kiss, Whitesnake, Twisted Sister, basically, like, you know, the Rolling Stones, obviously, old school rock and roll, metal, you know, classic lounge singers like Frank Sinatra, and just all that great stuff. I love the old stuff. Old stuff is awesome. So music is one thing where it's like, I just don't understand the appeal in modern day music because most of it is just terrible to me. But again, what do I know? I'm just a grandpa. As long as they let NXT Creative do the build-up to the match, I would have no problem with it at all whatsoever. I think NXT has done well enough and has been consistent enough with their 2-hour specials to show that they deserve a spot at WrestleMania. And if they want to do an NXT title match, again, as long as NXT Creative is in charge of building up the match and executing the match, I have no problem with it at all whatsoever, because I'm sure it would be great. I'm sure it would be somewhat of a show stealer. If they do Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens at WrestleMania, holy fuck, it'll blow most of WrestleMania out of the water. It might even be the best match on the show, depending on what they do this year. Because, remember, they don't have the streak anymore. Roman Reigns is probably going to face Brock Lesnar, which, still, I don't know about that. So, yeah, I'd be totally open to have an NXT title match at WrestleMania. Again, providing the right guys are behind the creative in terms of building the match up and executing the match itself. It's something I would like to see. I have. I really like those guys at Spill.com and everything. I just think that their reviews were always just so funny and just so creative. Even if I disagreed with their ultimate assessment of the movie, they would entertain me so much with their reviews that it just didn't matter. It was just, it was like sitting in a room with a bunch of guys and just talking shit about a movie, and but at the same time providing very in-depth analysis that actually sounds very smart. When you break it down and actually analyze it, it's very smart and very thought out, but it's presented in such a way that feels fun and relaxed and very funny. And yeah, I really like those guys, and I have watched some of their reviews on Double Toasted, and again, it's the same old deal. They're just really funny, very relaxed, and very cool. I think my favorite review that they've ever done was it was for one of the Seltzer and Freeberg movies. I think it was the Twilight Pair, Vampires Suck. I think that was the one they did where Corey just went off on this tangent where he was like, they are my enemies. I will kill them. He said, what did he say? If I ever came within 5 feet of them, Spill.com would die because I would just lose my temper and just fucking murder them right on the spot. Just something crazy like that. It was like, holy shit, he really does not like Seltzer and Friedberg. Neither do I. For a while, they were cinematic garbage, and they were the bane of cinema for a while. Thankfully, they've kind of faded away, but those guys, I think the reviews are very funny, and they're still very funny in the new site at Double Toasted. So, yeah, it's just great stuff, and I really enjoy listening to them. Well, I just read a report that they turned down an offer for a tryout at WWE, so it sounds like they don't even want to go there. But even if that hadn't been a thing, I don't think they'd work there for two reasons. One, their size. WWE has a problem with that. And number two, they're a tag team, and WWE loves to break up tag teams and fuck with them and not put too much focus on the tag team division. That will also be a problem, and I don't think either guy will work as a singles guy, because TNA tried it, and it just didn't fly. I think they would work very well in NXT. I'll say that. I actually haven't seen any of it. This last season of Legend of Korra, which went through some production hell, well, not necessarily production hell, but it got pulled off Nickelodeon, they got put back on Nickelodeon, it was aired online at first, now it's actually on the network or whatever, I don't know. It's really weird, but I haven't actually seen any of Season 4 yet. I've had very little of it spoiled for me beyond what's just in the trailer, so I'm going to probably marathon it and watch the whole thing, so hopefully it's good. I did like Season 3. I thought it was a vast improvement over Season 2, which was just peaks and valleys. Like, I liked where Season 2 ended. Getting there was kind of a bumpy road, though. There was, like I said, it was peaks and valleys. That's what Season 2 was. I thought Season 3 was more consistent. I do think they missed the opportunity at doing like a really big reveal with the bad guys in Season 3, and I don't want to spoil it, but excuse me, I think they had a chance to have like a big reveal with them, and they haven't. There's a story point they haven't explored in this show yet, and I thought maybe they could have done it with this particular group of bad guys, and they didn't do it. But I don't want to say anything because I haven't seen Season 4 yet, so maybe they do explore that story point, so who knows. But Yeah, I need to get on watching season 4. I hope it's good. So supposedly, from what I've heard, it has been really good. The feedback I have heard is that season 4 is really good. So I'll check it out at some point, and hopefully I really, really like it. Oh, there are plenty of guys. Lots of guys that I can think of. Brian Pillman really missed the big parts of the Attitude Era. I think had he survived and not had his personal demons or whatever, and actually been alive for 98, 99, and 2000, I think he could have contributed greatly to the Attitude Era because his personality was just natural. He was a natural for that time period, and actually helped usher in the Attitude Era. Obviously, the gun incident with Austin, which is, I still say to this day, one of the best things they ever filmed. I'm just one of the most believable, realistic things they ever filmed, and a lot of that was the way Brian Pillman sold everything and reacted to everything. So, I think Dean Ambrose is a guy that would have benefited from the Attitude Era. I think Bray Wyatt's a guy that would have benefited from the Attitude Era. Paige comes to mind. And I think where they would have benefited is the fact that creative just was better back then, and I think they would have been given a better stage to showcase their characters. I'm trying to think. Who are some other guys? One guy from the past that I will throw in there, Bad News Brown, who character-wise was basically Stone Cold Steve Austin before there was Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was just this mean, nasty guy that did not like anybody. And one of the most effective things they ever did with his character was in Survivor Series 89, I think it was. He walked out on his Survivor Series team, and I was like, oh wow, there's a heel that doesn't like other heels. He's not friends with the heels just because he's a heel. He doesn't like anybody. He's an asshole he's a loner, and he just hates everybody in general, not just baby faces. And there were layers to his character there, and I think had he been around in the Attitude Era, I think that would have been explored more. Jake Roberts is another guy that would have been perfect for the Attitude Era time period. But he was kind of he was obviously more of that rock and wrestling era. So there were lots of guys that I think would have been great in the Attitude Era, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that creative was just so much better back then that they would have had an easier time getting their characters over, and probably would have been given more freedom to do so anyway. Not very, I'm sorry to say. I watch college football once in a while, but there are just so many bowl games that it's hard to really gauge, like, what's important and what should I get invested in and all that other stuff. It's the NFL system is a lot simpler, so, and I'm not the smartest, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but anyway, I do watch it from time to time, and if there is a team I root for, it's Wake Forest, because that's my dad's alma mater. The problem with that, though, is that they're typically not very good, so it almost feels like a wasted effort. But in any case, that's pretty much my experience with college football. I wish I could give you a better answer than that, but sorry. For years, AJ was one of my favorite guys to watch. Even when TNA was in its down years, typically I was like, well, at least I'm enjoying AJ Styles. I like watching him. Just an exciting talent. I usually enjoyed his matches. Just an all-around great talent, and he got better on the mic as the years went on, and that's become more of a strength for him as his career has evolved. I haven't seen much of him since he left TNA. I've watched one Ring of Honor show that he was a part of, and I'm going to watch Wrestle Kingdom 9, so that's going to be very cool. I keep reading that he keeps hurting people with the Styles Clash. It feels like every other week I'm reading another headline that somebody else gets hurt with the Styles Clash, which sounds strange because AJ's usually pretty safe, and the only time I ever recall him having an issue with the Styles Clash and hurting somebody was there was a match he had with Kazarian where he kind of dropped Kazarian on his head. But I don't know if it's AJ's fault or if it's the guys not taking it right. I don't know, but that's not like AJ to be having that happen with him. But I love watching AJ Styles, and I look forward to seeing him again at Wrestle Kingdom 9. He's a great talent and one of my favorites to watch. I think it's getting harder and harder to come up with original ideas because as more movies are made, obviously, it becomes harder and harder to come up with something that people haven't seen before. And not just superhero movies, but all across the board, it's just becoming easier to just rehash old franchises that have been around for decades. Like, look at next year, we're getting Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Avengers is getting a sequel, and those are the movies that people seem to be most excited for. So, and even this year, I mean, the movie I was most excited for was Godzilla, a franchise that I've been watching since I was 4 years old. So, it's getting harder and harder to come up with original ideas. That said, I did see Birdman, and I thought that was a great movie. I thought Chef was a great movie. So, and even Guardians of the Galaxy, which, it's based off of a comic, but it had never been adapted before as a movie, so that was fresh and new just from that aspect. That it was new characters being adapted. It wasn't just the same old, Batman, Superman, X-Men, Spider-Man, Marvel's entire crew. So it was something different, something new, at least. But again, cinema's kind of at this point where you got to fill up those multiplexes and you got to shell out those movies, and it's getting harder and harder to come up with original ideas. I mean, even Pixar, after Toy Story 3, I mean, they've just kind of struggled. I mean, Brave was kind of and Monsters University kind of sucked, and Cars 2, why the fuck did Cars need a sequel? I mean, so it's, it's kind of the state of movies now, unfortunately. But, it is very hard to come up with original ideas. Well, when I get hit with the statement, well, it's fake, right? Whenever I get that one, I just kind of go, yeah, so's the last movie you saw. So's the last TV show you saw. It's entertainment. I don't care if it's fake. I know it's fake. I know it's scripted. I'm just entertained by it when it's good. But typically one of the answers I like to give is that wrestling, when it's done right, is an art form that was tailor-made for somebody like me, because I love movies, I love television, I love story arcs and great characters and all that stuff, but I also love athleticism. I love football, I love the Olympics, I love hockey and all sorts of other things, and mixed martial arts I've even watched from time to time, and I just enjoy athleticism, I enjoy sports. Wrestling is an art form that combines both. I get the entertainment of movies and television shows with the athleticism of all my favorite sports as well. And for me, that's just the best of both worlds when it's done correctly. And a lot of times I am quick to point out, it's now look, WWE sucks. I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm just saying that there is good wrestling out there, and when it is good, I do enjoy it for those reasons. Well, I have never read any manga at all, so I can't help you out there. I can't really give you much of a substantial answer in that regard. But with anime, again, I've never been sucked into the whole anime fan base thing. Otakon is held right here in Baltimore, and I've never gone because I'm not a big anime person. I just don't watch it that much. But I do have my anime shows that I have watched and I do enjoy. I grew up on Voltron, obviously. As an 80s kid, I don't know if that counts, but in my mind it does. DBZ basically got me through high school in that I basically torched my brain every day studying biology and psychology and all sorts of weird crap, and I just needed DBZ and just the insane levels of stupidity that show offered. I needed it. It was just the ultimate junk food for my brain. I just needed it. And I will be forever grateful to DBZ for getting me through high school. Excuse me. Probably my favorite animes, though, Cowboy Bebop, I really love. Really enjoyed that when I finally got around to watching that. Trigun I really enjoyed. I wasn't a fan of the last episode, but overall I did really like Trigun. And one that I have watched that shocks people, because this one isn't very well known in America, but I have watched Excel Saga from start to finish, and I loved it. It was just so weird and wacky and really creative and funny, and I just like really got sucked into it. I was like, wow, this is actually really funny, and I credit my sister to that. She got me into that one, but I don't know, that one was just so weird and nutty that I just kind of liked it. But sorry to say I can't give you more of a substantial answer than beyond that. I have seen the Japanese Transformer shows. I've seen Headmasters, which was, again, it was very strange, but whatever. But I haven't watched a whole lot of anime beyond that. So, yeah. Hopefully that's a good enough answer for you. My favorite belt design ever was the $1 Million Championship belt. That thing was fucking sweet. But seriously, though, everybody seems to go to the Winged Eagle WWF Championship belt that Hogan held, and the big gold belt that WCW had. And I tend to agree. I think those are the two best. Those are just when I think of like the classic wrestling championship belts, just the best looking belts. Those are the two that instantly pop into my mind. The Winged Eagle WWF belt and the big gold belt from WCW, last few years of the NWA. Just beautiful looking belts and just beautiful to look at. Not that that's the most important thing in the world, but as a kid, looking at those two championship belts, those look like the two belts that you'd want to have. And of course, the $1 Million Championship belt. That thing, just fucking beautiful. But yeah, those two. When I think of World Heavyweight Championships, those are the two that come to my mind. They just look the best to me. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I saw them when I was a kid, but when I think of the top tier belts in the company, those are the two designs that really pop into my mind. No, because if I tried, my head would explode, trying to make sense out of all that insanity. And I think there are other people out there that, are better suited than I to cover DBZ and to explain its history and to maybe even do parodies of it. There's a little thing out there, don't know if you know about it. It's made by Team 4-Star. It's called DBZ Abridged, and it's kind of fucking amazing. So, yeah, I love them, and they do good work. So there's really no reason for me to do a video series about DBZ when they do it so well. Just go watch them. They do it fantastically. Their whole thing with the Frieza saga was just amazing. And, the personalities that they've given some of these characters is just really, really funny and just really creative. But, yeah, if I tried to do a video series explaining DBZ, I'm fairly certain my head would explode. And I'd have to give up doing wrestling videos for like 3 months because I would just have to dedicate the entire thing to doing DBZ, and, who wants to do that? But although it would spare me from having to watch Raw every week, so maybe there's a good thing to that. But, yeah, and I make no promises that I'll be doing that video series. It probably wouldn't even go that well if I did. I don't know, and not to sound like a dick, but I don't really care either. And what I mean by that is, and this is where CM Punk and I are kind of on the same wavelength. My mind is always thinking ahead and always like thinking towards the future and what you can get out of something. Like once you do a show, it's like, all right, now what are you going to do? And how are you going to build off of what you did before or whatever. And to me, the Royal Rumble is a good opportunity to start building towards WrestleMania. I think back to 1990 when they did the Hogan Warrior stare down, and they did Savage and Dusty continuing their feud, and Jake and DiBiase continued their feud, and Andre and Haku had a run-in with Demolition, and they did a lot of things to build into WrestleMania. 2004, they did the thing where the gong sounded and the Undertaker's theme started to play, and Kane freaked out, and they set that up. Foley came back to challenge Randy Orton. They set that up. They were building towards WrestleMania in addition to establishing a top contender for the WrestleMania main event. So those are the stuff that I look forward to in the Royal Rumble, and I think they should do more of, which they've kind of they've kind of given that a back seat and focused more on, oh, who can we throw out there? What joke can we throw out there? Can we throw Hornswoggle out there? It'll be funny. Can we throw the Bull out there? It'll be funny. What old guy can we dust off to go in there and do an entrance in the Rumble? So, and it's become more about that than actually using the opportunity to build up WrestleMania matches. And I prefer building up WrestleMania matches over giving spots to old retired guys. And I know that sounds mean, but that's just the way my brain kind of works. The only old guy I would look for to be in the Royal Rumble this year would be Sting. And even then it would be with the interest of what's Sting going to do? Is Sting trying to challenge Brock Lesnar? Is he going to... is Triple H going to come out the second he sees Sting and cost Sting the Royal Rumble? I mean, what are they going to do? Again, my brain would just be able to kind of connect the dots from there. But other than that, I'm not interested in seeing any kind of surprise entrance. I mean, if Rob Van Dam comes back at the Royal Rumble, it's okay, so he gets his pop and then he loses, so who cares, I don't know what kind of long-term build-up they're going to get out of that. If Kevin Nash comes back, he's going to be in there for 2 minutes and he's going to get thrown out. Who cares? He'll get his big pop and that's it. And, so the surprise entrant thing just doesn't really do it for me. And I would prefer it if they would take the Royal Rumble and use the opportunity to better build into WrestleMania rather than just filling it up with old guys and comedy spots. I really wish I could give you an interesting answer to that question, but really, I bought a new laptop because I needed it. It had a webcam attached to it, which is the first laptop I'd ever owned that had that feature. And I thought, hey, why don't I make YouTube wrestling videos and and join in on some of the discussions and stuff and post my feelings on pro wrestling and stuff and see if anybody even gives a shit about it. And that's really all there was to it. There wasn't I wish I could give you a better answer than that, but really it was literally oh, hey, I have a webcam now. What can I do with it? And this is what I came up with. So hopefully it's worked out. It's I've enjoyed doing it, and hopefully you all have too. And that's all there is. I think Sting's debut was more satisfying in the sense it's oh wow, that was really cool, as opposed to the ending of the Undertaker's streak, which felt kind of shitty. It was shocking and it is historically significant, but at the same time, it's also, like I said, the match itself wasn't very good, and they didn't do a very good job of building up to that point where the streak could possibly end. So it just felt like what am I looking at? A curveball was thrown our way, and it wasn't a very well executed one either. So I think the one I liked more was Sting's WWE debut. Which one was bigger? I think I'd go with Sting as well. I mean, granted, they put over 2 decades into the Undertaker's streak, but I think with Sting making his debut in the WWE, the biggest name in the history of wrestling to have never worked in the WWE. I mean, that goes as far back as the late 80s and Sting's entire career, basically, that he became the big star that he became without ever having worked for the WWE, and now he's officially under the WWE banner. I think that's really huge and very significant. I would say Sting is actually the bigger headline there. I don't know. You tell me. The same way that you would fix almost anything in wrestling. Give the characters direction, give them better storylines, make the matches matter, make the matches mean something. Maybe put good performers in better positions to make those stories work. Let the matches be longer than 4 minutes. I don't know. There's, really a lot of the things that they could do to fix the Divas division would also help fix the tag division, or make the mid-card titles actually matter again. There's a bunch of things that they could do, and I don't see any of it changing anytime soon, but those are the breaks. Well, obviously the New York Giants. I mean, come on. They're just juggernauts this year. No, the Giants are completely terrible. But, it's really hard to make a prediction because even at this point, we're December with 2 weeks left to go in the regular season, and it's been such a weird year where teams will look good one week and then they look like absolute shit the next. I couldn't tell you who's going to win. It's really hard to say. I can't really make much of an educated guess. If I had to take a guess, and I hate myself for saying it, but probably New England would be my number one pick. And I hope that's wrong because I don't want them to ever win another Super Bowl. Not in the Brady Belichick era. Excuse me. But other than that, I mean, it's really hard to say. It's going to be a tough call this year. It'll be very interesting to see who even makes it to the Super Bowl because it's just such a bizarre year that I'm sure it'll be something kooky. So we'll see. I'm inclined to lean towards Hogan because Hogan was had a longer period on top. His main event run lasted longer, and he was really a big key component of two major periods in wrestling, both the Rock and Wrestling era and the Monday Night Wars period as part of the NWO and the whole thing with WCW. So I'm more inclined to lean towards Hogan, although Austin, for the, let's say 4 years that he was really hot shit, well, he took 1 year off because of the neck surgery, but let's say they got a good, excuse me, they got a good 3 years out of Austin as, the really big number one top guy where he was really on fire. He was probably more over in that period than Hogan ever was, if that makes any sense. But I think Hogan's longevity kind of trumps it. But then again, it's to build more into Austin, Hogan was around so long at points that it was like tired hat, like in the early 90s or when he first got to WCW and his run in TNA. So, it's, Austin was never as low as Hogan got with his lows. So, again, it's very hard to say, but again, I'm more inclined to lean towards Hogan because he was around during those formative years where WrestleMania was founded and the Rock and Wrestling era was formed, and then he was also a key component in starting the Monday Night Wars as well. So, even though Austin was the key component in making the WWF awesome during the Monday Night Wars period, but again, I'm more inclined to lean more towards Hogan on that one, but you could say either one and I wouldn't contradict you, so, I'm not going to hold my breath waiting for it, but I would love it if they did. I think it would be awesome to do King Kong versus Godzilla again. If there's any Godzilla movie that deserves a remake, I think it's that one, because the original movie, while it was the first Godzilla movie I ever saw, and while I really enjoy it for a multitude of reasons, it's not as good as it should have been. The Kong suit looked terrible. It was more of a comedy film rather than the... basically, what I've always said is that what you got in Godzilla versus the Thing, or Mothra versus Godzilla, that's what King Kong versus Godzilla should have been. And I felt like... I always felt like that movie could have been done a lot better, and I would be fully open to another King Kong Godzilla crossover. And with the legendary Godzilla film coming out, and with King Kong getting another reboot with Skull Island, which hopefully that's an original story and they don't just remake the original movie again, which I'm pretty sure that's what it's going to be. But it's going to be a completely original story, which King Kong desperately needs that. Once that happens, and if that goes well, maybe then we can get King Kong versus Godzilla. I would be fully open for that. I would really enjoy it. I wouldn't have booked it the way they did it. Let's just say that. I would have made Undertaker's opponent look very, very strong heading into WrestleMania. If they wanted Lesnar to be the guy, which clearly they did, I wouldn't have had him lose to Triple H at WrestleMania the year before. I wouldn't have had him lose to Cena in his debut match. I wouldn't have had him wrestle Triple H 3 times where they wrestle competitive 50-50 type of matches, or actually more than 50-50, where it felt like Triple H dominated the 2 matches that he lost. So I would not have booked Lesnar that way if he was going to be the one to ultimately end the streak. Excuse me. Who would I pick to end the streak? Of the current roster, the one that obviously jumps out to me is Bray Wyatt. Obviously, the booking has kind of fucked him over recently, but I would have kept the Wyatt family together, and I would have just had him be the guy to kind of do what Mankind did in '96 and just be the guy that's willing to spit in Undertaker's face and say, I'm not afraid of you. I have no reason to be afraid of you. I'm creepier and way darker than you ever were. And just let this present the feud in a way that highlights the similarities and the differences of the two characters. And I think that would have been interesting. And then Bray wins, and you would theoretically have created a new star. I would not have had him lose to John Cena, 18 times, and then work that one cage match, which was like just insanity. But even though he won, it was insanity. But I would have booked the feud. Basically, I would have made Undertaker's opponent look very, 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 very strong heading into WrestleMania before actually doing it. Lance Storm actually, in an interview, made a very interesting point, is that he would have booked it to say that Undertaker, like years ago, they should have said this years ago, Undertaker should have said in an interview at some point that he is going to continue wrestling until the streak is stopped, until the streak ends, because I don't want to hang on and then retire and then wonder, could I have won one more or something like that. So he felt like if they had made that point clear years ago, people would have been kept tuning into WrestleMania to see if this would be the year that Taker would finally lose. Because if you have Taker say that, you're ultimately saying that at some point the streak is going to end, and that kind of builds anticipation for, like, all right, when's it going to happen? Because we got to a point where we were so jaded that we were just like, oh, it's never going to end. I mean, he's kicked out of every single thing under the sun. You could shoot him, he'll still kick out. So it's like it's never going to end. All sorts of stuff. So I think Lance actually had a really good idea there. If they had done that, I think it would have made the Lesnar situation a little bit more acceptable and more less like something that they just pulled out of the hat for the sake of shock value or something like that. So I think that's also something they could have booked to make it better. But in any case, I mean, ending the streak would be a very, very, very hard thing to do, and it's a very hard thing to book. I understand all of that. I just don't think the way they did it was very good at all. But, what do I know? I'm going to answer that question by asking another. Is that still a thing? Is, like, the whole Robot Wars type of sporting thing, is that still, like, a thing that exists? Because I haven't seen it in a long time. I remember... I think it was in the early 2000s, all those, like, BattleBots shows and all that. There were, like, 2 or 3 of them, I think, that had come out. And I watched once or twice. I mean, it's kind of cool, and it's fun. I was more interested in that, and maybe this is just a sign of me getting old, but I was more interested in listening to the people talk about how they built the robots rather than actually watching the robots fight. If that makes any sense, because I have no, like, mechanical know-how at all whatsoever, so it was more fascinating to me to listen to them talk about how they built all these robots. But I never got hooked on it, and I never, like, became a fan of it or anything like that, and I'm really not all that knowledgeable about it, obviously. I didn't even know that it was still going, and that it's still, like, a thing. So, so, I mean, if you're into that, I mean, that's really cool and everything, but it was just never one of my favorite things to watch. I will be shocked if it's not Roman Reigns. It just seems like he's just primed and ready to take that spot at this point. Well, okay, the WWE is primed and ready to put him in that spot. Let's just say that. I have my doubts on whether or not he's actually ready. I think he needs a lot of work. I'm not saying he can't be a main event star. I'm just saying they've got some work to do to get Roman ready for that role. And I actually had the idea of having him be the guy to work with Rusev at WrestleMania and let him beat Rusev and hopefully, build him up that way, because I think putting him right into the main event right away, his first singles WrestleMania, when he still struggles on the mic a little bit, he took some time off for the emergency surgery and everything, and that may or may not have impacted him. Whatever. In singles matches, he's struggled a little bit. He's not quite as explosive as he is as the hot tag guy in the Shield matches. So I think Roman has a lot of work to do, but regardless of what I think or what anybody else thinks, I'm pretty sure WWE is going to give him the Royal Rumble win next year. Who else is it going to be? Dean Ambrose? I would prefer that, but I have heavy doubts that that's gonna happen. So unless something crazy happens, count on it being Roman Reigns to win the Royal Rumble this year. This is a lighting switch to a overhead lamp that no longer exists. So really, it's a switch to nothing. It's a dimmer, which would dim the light bulb, depending on how bright you wanted it and stuff like that. But the light is no longer there, so really it's a switch to nothing. So it's really just a glorified decoration at this point. It isn't so much a question of the quality of the talent, because, as I've said before, in NXT, the talent's there. It's more the quantity of talent, because to me, a belt really means more if you have more people going for it. And right now, NXT only has, I think, just over 20 guys, I think. And to me, and obviously they're all split off in different directions. Some of them are off in the tag division, some of them are more in the main event scene. And to me, that's just not nearly enough guys to really support a second title. To me, they would need... let's say for sake of argument, let's say they have 25 guys. I would say they need at least half of that added to their roster. So let's say another 12 or 13 to really justify having a secondary title. I'm just a fan of, if you're going to have a belt, it needs to have, there has to be a clear ranking, whether it's official or not. There should be some sort of clear division of success between among the different competitors in the roster, and belts should be hard to win, and making them harder to win, one way to do that is to have depth on your roster and a lot of bodies trying to vie for a shot at that title. That type of stuff. So NXT, I don't think a secondary title's really all that necessary. I don't think they need it. I think they're fine with what they have. And they've got the perfect number for the one belt that they have, I think. So I'm perfectly fine with the way it is now. I never saw it. I know that sounds like sacrilege. Lost was one of the big shows there for a while, a few years ago. But I never saw it, never actually watched it. And I always swore that one day I would get around to actually watching it, although I've heard that the series finale is not very good, and that kind of discouraged me a little bit. People I trust that watched the show from start to finish did not like the finale, and were just really upset over it. And that kind of turned me off to one day wanting to watch the show, but I'm sure one day I'll check it out, and hopefully I like it. But I'm sorry to say I've never actually seen it. I was not what you would call an ECW diehard. I was a little younger when ECW was really in its heyday. I was only... the first time I'd heard of ECW, I was only about 12 years old. And that was only the first time I'd ever heard of it. And I lived in Maryland, still live in Maryland, and it was not readily available to my market. So, they didn't tour around here did they ever tour DC? If they did, I wasn't aware of it. And it wasn't like it was possible for me to take road trips up to Philly just to go to an ECW show. And if I had, I probably would have been eaten alive, because I'm a Giants fan. going to Philly, and I'm also a 12-year-old going to Philly. So, going to an extreme wrestling show like that, I would have been, oh God, those fans would have eaten me for lunch. But in any case, the little I did see, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I loved Raven's feud with Tommy Dreamer. I loved the first Barely Legal pay-per-view. I really enjoyed that show. Rob Van Dam's matches with Jerry Lynn were insane, and it really, watching those matches now, I realize how great Jerry Lynn really was, because Rob Van Dam was very flashy, very charismatic. I don't think he was very good at putting matches together. I think he was just kind of a spot guy. I think Jerry was the one that really led the dance on those, and I think they're really a testament to just how good of a mind he had for wrestling, and really one of the more underrated workers in the history of the business. Jerry Lynn was just unbelievable. I'm trying to, what were some other things I liked? The Dudleys were just red-hot heels. Sabu was totally insane and crazy to watch. I really liked Rhino in the final days, in the closing days of ECW. I really liked Rhino. I was always kind of big on him. Yeah, I was never a big fan of Sandman. To me, he was just really cool entrance, very likable character, but he couldn't work worth a lick. And it kind of shows if you watch him. But I was not a regular viewer of ECW. I just watched it whenever I could. And whenever I did watch it, I typically enjoyed it. So, yeah, ECW definitely had its influences if you watched the Attitude Era WWF, or you watched even WCW to some of a degree when the NWO first came in. There was just, when that harder edge came to wrestling on a mainstream level, it was huge, and it really started with ECW and kind of the attitude that they had. So, yeah, I recognize its influence, definitely. I just wish I had gotten to watch more of it. Actually, one of my regrets is that I never got to go to a live ECW show. I think that would have been a crazy experience. If nothing else, it would have been fun. But, that's just how that works. But, yeah, ECW. Not a huge fan, but I watched it when I could, and I did enjoy it. Now I have the network, so I guess I could watch all those old hardcore TVs. So that should be fun. Again, I'm not a huge foreign cinema aficionado or expert, but I've seen my fair share of foreign films, and I do. I enjoy the ones that I've seen. Kira Kurosawa, I've seen Seven Samurai, which, watching that movie, you definitely see where George Lucas got a lot of his inspiration for Star Wars. That movie's a classic. I've seen Yojimbo. I've seen various other things. The spaghetti westerns, I really like some of those because they were made in Italy, even though they were... I don't even know where I was going with that. But anyway, I have seen some of those. I do love, like, the ones with The Man with No Name and Clint Eastwood. I really like those. The Edgar Wright trilogy, the Cornetto trilogy, I really love those movies. I mean, they're English movies. And they're English-speaking, but they count. They're foreign. The oldest movie that I have in my DVD collection is Nosferatu. It seems really stupid to own that on DVD because it's public domain. I can literally watch it on YouTube. But to me, I love the movie that much that I felt like I needed to have it on my shelf. It's a movie that deserves to be on my shelf. So of course, that's a German silent movie, and I love that movie. So that's another one I really like. Pan's Labyrinth is another one I really enjoy. Oh, God, I'm trying to think. I just saw Let the Right One In, which I believe is Swedish, I want to say. And I did enjoy that. It's a little weird, but I did enjoy it. It's basically a good version. And try to imagine Twilight if Twilight was good. And that's basically Let the Right One In. So, yeah, there's plenty of good foreign cinema out there. And, of course, being a Godzilla fan, that obviously led to me being a Gamera fan and fan of all the other Toho monster movies like Rodan and Mothra and War of the Gargantuas and the Mysterians and Atragan and what are some of the other ones I've seen? Frankenstein Conquers the World, which had Baragon in it. There was the King Kong movie that they did, King Kong Escapes. The Mothra trilogy, which isn't that great. But, so... again, I don't have the best knowledge of foreign cinema, but I've dabbled in it in little bits and pieces here and there, and I have enjoyed what I have. I've enjoyed what I've enjoyed, and that's that. So, yeah. Not really, and a lot of that has to do with just the bad booking in TNA. He started off really hot with the unbeaten streak, and then it felt like once they hot-shotted the match with Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe just kind of became like a stop-and-go type of thing. They gave him the title at one point, and it looked like it was going to be something really good, but then it didn't amount to too much, and then ever since then, he's kind of become like TNA's equivalent of when we make fun of Kane, or when I do, like make fun of Kane or Big Show. It's like, oh, it's that time of the year to try and make Samoa Joe a monster again. And that's kind of what he's become. He never really lived up to the potential that he had coming out of Ring of Honor after that big fucking title reign of his, which, how long did that go on? Like 2 years? It was something crazy like that. So, I don't think Joe ever quite lived up to that potential. And again, a lot of that has to do with just bad booking, and that's unfortunate, but that's, a lot of these wrestlers that don't pan out, a lot of people also have to keep in mind they are at the mercy of the promoters and the bookers, and if the promoters and the bookers aren't on board with them, or if they're not fully competent, then that's going to cause a lot of problems for the wrestler. You can only do so much with what you're given, and Samoa Joe's just one of those guys that wasn't always given great material, and it kind of showed, unfortunately. Well, in the sequel that Legendary's going to do, we're getting Mothra, King Ghidorah, and Rodan. I would definitely have Rodan in there because Rodan's one of my favorites, and I don't think he comes back nearly enough. And to me, not only is he one of my favorites, to me he's one of the biggies. I think Rodan is one of the big major monster stars that Toho ever made, and he doesn't come back nearly enough, and I'd like to see more of him. So that's probably what I'm most excited about in the sequel. It's like, yay, more Rodan. But, Mothra and King Ghidorah, they've come back so many times. Mothra even got her own trilogy, and, it's... I feel like, as a fan, I understand why they picked them, because they're the bigger names and they're the bigger stars, and it makes total sense, and I'm excited that they're going to be in it, but at the same time, it's like, I've kind of seen King Ghidorah and Mothra like a dozen times each, so it's like, I'd like to see something a little different. My mind would have gone towards getting Anguirus in there. Anguirus is a big fan favorite who has only, Final Wars was the first time he was used in almost 30 years, I think. It was exactly 30 years. And it's hard to believe that this big fan favorite hardly ever gets used. I would have put Anguirus in there. As for Godzilla opponents, I was thinking right off the bat for a sequel, I was like, all right, I'd like to see the Smog Monster in there. I'd like to see Biollante, and I would like to see Destroyer. Like, those are the three that I would have been working with, and I think they would have been, like, really fun to see modern-day versions of those creatures, because they were so great back in their initial films, and I think it would have been really cool to see, like, updated versions of them in these new movies. As for what I would do if I was actually in charge of the franchise, that would actually be a really bad thing, because I would take it so seriously, and I would overthink everything to just the nth degree, because I'm so passionate about Godzilla, and it's something that I'm a big fan of, that I think the crews would hate me, I think the studios would hate me, because I would just be like, I do not want to fuck this up, this is fucking Godzilla, and I think everybody would be looking at me like, dude, it's a movie about a rubber lizard. I mean, come on, man. It's like, calm the fuck down. But if I were in charge of the Godzilla franchise, and if I had any say at all, one thing that I would love to see, this is Godzilla the Half-Century War, which is a comic book series. I have the trade paperback version. It's a comic book series that came out 2013, I want to say. And basically it's about Godzilla and this one man who fights Godzilla for 50 years, basically. And how their two fates are intertwined over the course of 50 years. And I'll be honest, it is one of the best Godzilla stories I have ever seen. Whether it be movies, video games, comic books, whatever. It's one of the best Godzilla stories I've ever seen. And if you're looking for good Godzilla comics, I think it doesn't get any better than this one. It's Godzilla the Half-Century War. I highly recommend it. And the first time I read it, I was kind of like, I would like to see a movie of this. This would be a great Godzilla movie. I think it would be fantastic. It would be ambitious as fuck because there are 14 monsters in it total. There's one scene that has 8 monsters in it at once. And like I said, the story takes place over the course of 50 years, so it would be very ambitious and very hard to do. But if they did it right, it would. I think it would be an amazing Godzilla movie. It won't happen. That's totally a pipe dream on my part. But if I were somehow in charge of the Godzilla franchise, I would definitely pitch it. I'm like, can we adapt that into a script? Because I would really like to see that as a movie. But yeah, if I were in charge of the Godzilla series, I would be nothing but a headache to the studios, I think, because it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I am a big fan, and I would want to do everything in my power to make sure it was done justice. And, it is what it is. But personally, I think the series is in good hands now. Like I said, I respected what Gareth Edwards did with his movie, and I like the direction that Legendary wants to go in, and I trust them with a sequel. So, all right, you want to do Rodan, Mothra, and King Ghidorah? Bring it on. Let them fight. I'm fully on board with it. I can't wait to finally see it, and I think it's coming out in 2018, so it's going to be a bit of a wait. But, yeah, I'm fully on board with it. I want to see it, so here's hoping. Well, if you're an NXT fan, it is very easy to feel that way because I look at their roster now, and I'm looking up and down the NXT roster, which is mostly great, but I'm just thinking, yeah, Bayley, I love you, but you're going to suck when you get to the WWE's main roster because they're just going to focus on that one aspect of her character, which is that she likes to hug people, and they're going to make that her thing. That's all she's going to be, and that's all she's ever going to do, despite the fact that she's immensely talented, and despite the fact that she can convey a multi-layered character besides just being a crazy hugger. The vaudevillains, hilarious. They will suck when they get to the main roster because it's going to become a one-note gag and it's not going to be funny. There's so many other guys. Charlotte, we saw what they did to her. I mean, even you look at the main roster now. Even guys that they like Bray Wyatt and Dean Ambrose, get hampered by bad writing. And it's just... it's not cool. It's just... So it's very easy to think, it's like, oh God, I wish these NXT guys would just stay in NXT, but, going to the main roster also probably comes with better paychecks, so, and I don't know when Vince is going to quit, and that's also another problem. If it was going to be soon, I would say, yeah, just wait until he's done and then start moving the NXT guys up, but, I mean, Vince could go on for another 10 years for all we know, so, you really can't tell. I've heard rumors that Adrian Neville is going to get moved up soon, and my response to that is I should be excited, right? Because Adrian Neville was the last NXT champion before Sami Zayn got the belt and did really well and had all these great main events. I hear he's going to be moved up, and I'm like, well, it was nice knowing you, Adrian. It's nice knowing you. You're not going to amount to anything in the WWE's main roster through no fault of your own. I guarantee it will not be your fault. It'll just be the way that you're perceived and the way Vince typically books his talent. Because like I said, I mean, all right, you look at Dean Ambrose and Bray Wyatt, the way they've been booked. I'm like, all right, guys, those are the guys that Vince likes. And they're getting booked like that. So what does that tell you? I mean... even Rollins, to a degree. They're obviously very high on him, but they still booked him in that fucking tables match with Cena, which was like the most ridiculous thing ever. Rusev, they've given him an unbeaten streak, but they also had Rock bitch him out when Rock made a special appearance. So it's just like, you just throw your hands up and you go, I don't know why this stuff happens. It's just insanity. But, yeah, I mean, there's that part of us, of all of us NXT fans that are thinking, it's like, please don't move anybody up. Please don't move anybody up. Let's just keep the guys that we like on the show that we like. But at the same time, you know that that's impossible. So basically, I think what we all have to hope for is that Vince retires soon, because I think the longer this goes, the more obvious it is that CM Punk was right and that Vince is really out of touch. So hopefully we get to a point where Vince no longer has too much creative control over the main roster. And I think you will see a difference once that happens. But here's hoping. Well, I just reviewed the playoff standings, and it's going to be tough for them to get in. So at this point, I would say no. They're probably not going to make the playoffs, but there's still a chance. So we'll see. But the Houston Texans, they're a quizzical team, I will say. I pull for them because I hate the Dallas Cowboys so much, and to see them get dethroned as the team of Texas would really make me happy. It's like, look, seriously, I want Houston Texans to win the Super Bowl. Even if they beat the Giants in the Super Bowl, I still get, it's like, well, at least, they dethroned Dallas as the top team in Texas, so there's that. But, yeah, I think they've just always been on the cusp of being a really good team, and then something happens that slows them down. It's like the quarterback issues has really been a problem for them. They've got J.J. Watt, who I think is a beast and just absolutely amazing and probably my favorite defensive player to watch. Arian Foster was really good for a while. They've had weapons. They've had good offenses. They've had good defenses. It's just that they haven't been able to quite put it all together and make themselves into a regular contender. And I don't know why that is. They're still a relatively new team. They've only been around for 12 years, but like I said, I always kind of pull for them just to as a fuck you to Dallas. But here's hoping. I think they do have a pretty solid team there. They just need they need a quarterback, and B, no, that's really their big thing. They just need a good quarterback, and I think they would be at least regular playoff contenders. But again, hopefully they're able to draft something good, and we'll see how it goes from there. I think it's already started to change. I think a lot of people have looked at the NXT product and seen that, and they know that Triple H has a lot of influence in it, and have just seen how good it is. And I think, at the very least, people respect Triple H's knowledge for wrestling and knowledge for good wrestling and how to recreate good wrestling and make good wrestling shows. So, I don't know how, people say, oh, he's going to take over for Vince. I don't know how good he would be on the business side of things, but at least we see on the creative side of things, I think Triple H would do a very good job. And I think a lot of fans have recognized that. So Triple H will probably always have his naysayers, and Lord knows I'm probably going to still be one of them on certain things. Triple H is great when he's not booking himself, for example. But I do respect his knowledge for the business and the fact that he is a student of the game, and now he's utilizing that knowledge to create a really, really good thing. And I respect that, and I'm really happy about that. So thank you, Triple H. I appreciate it. The second I read that question, there were two that instantly popped into my mind. There was the Super Bowl between the Packers and the Broncos, where it was John Elway winning his first Super Bowl, and Brett Favre was quarterback in Green Bay at the time, going for their second straight Super Bowl, and that was an outstanding game, and I think for sure the best, one of the best Super Bowls of the 90s. Obviously, Giants and Bills is the best Super Bowl of the 90s, but that one's definitely a close second, and just an outstanding game, just a really good back and forth style of game, and I just really enjoyed it. The other game that really popped into my mind was the AFC Championship game of the 2006 season. Indianapolis Colts, led by Peyton Manning, versus New England Patriots, led by Tom Brady. And at first it looked like it was going to be a Patriots kill job, but the Colts hung in there, and they inched their way back into the game, and then were able to take control in the last minute and ultimately win the game. And it was one of the most exciting games I've ever watched in my entire life. One of the best football games ever. It was just, it far outdid the Super Bowl that year, because I think we all kind of knew that whoever won the AFC Championship game that year was probably going to win the Super Bowl, and that's exactly how it played out. But that was just an outstanding game. I remember I was in my dorm room at the time watching it, and I was just blown away. It's like, this is one of the best games ever. This is amazing. I love this. And I wasn't even rooting or, it was one of those games where it was like I wasn't even necessarily rooting for anybody, although I guess I was kind of pulling for the Colts a little bit. But I was just enjoying the game. It was just an outstanding game, and I loved it. And it was great. So, yeah, there are games that I love outside of ones that include the Giants. So, and those are two that definitely pop into my mind. Those are just really great games that really added to my fandom as a football fan and really made me love the game even more. Would still matter. Obviously, the streak and losing that takes a lot away from both the build-up, the storyline significance, and Wyatt's victory, but I think it would still matter. I mean, it's still, they're feeding Undertaker to Bray Wyatt, so it would just be a huge sign of faith in this character. And now, if they don't have a plan for him coming after, or a good plan for him after WrestleMania, then, or if they royally fuck up Bray Wyatt to the point where he can't be fixed and you probably won't remember the match 5 or 6 years from now. But I still think if they're serious about pushing Wyatt and they do want to have him go over Taker, I think it would be a good it would be good for him, and I think that it would mean something, even though losing the streak obviously takes a lot away from it, but I think it would still matter. Part of the joy of having not read the books yet is that I don't know what's going to happen, so I really do enjoy that part of watching the show. And normally I would read the books first, but I tried reading one of them, and I just did not like the way Martin... I don't like his prose, basically, where he's so descriptive to the point that it really kind of takes me out of it, if that makes any sense, where he's so bogged down in detail that and just hammers in the details so much that it really makes me feel like I don't have an imagination of my own and I can't create the image in my mind. He's just... It's... I don't know if this makes any sense at all, but basically I tried to read one of the books and I just couldn't. It was just not... I just didn't like the way it was written. I didn't like the style. But the good thing about having not read the books is that the shows are all new to me. And from what I've heard, they do follow the book pretty closely, or at least 85% closely. That's how it was described to me. But what am I looking forward to next season? Not having Bran Stark around. I heard that he's not going to be in the next season, and I am totally okay with that because his story arc is completely boring, and the less of him, the better. Now, I've heard Arya is going to play an even bigger role this time. Totally fine with that. She's one of my favorite characters. I want to see what happens with Tyrion. I think they left him in a very interesting position. I want to see what happens there. I want to see... oh God, do I even want to experience more of what's going on with Theon Greyjoy? I mean, that poor guy. I don't know. I mean, part of me wants him to come back and get revenge, but how is that even possible at this point? He's not even human anymore. He's like a broken shell of a man. But it is interesting. They've got plenty of things to revisit and go back to, and all sorts of stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with this season. I think it could be really good. There are plenty of guys they could get that would be good pickups. Tanahashi definitely comes to mind, but let's see how they do with Kenta first. So far, I think Kenta Hideo Itami, it's been so far so good in NXT. I think he's done really well. I think he's adjusted to the style very well. I think he's performed well, and this last match he had at NXT TakeOver was a big step in the right direction for both him and Prince Devitt, Finn Balor. But again, we'll see. Let's see how they do when they get to the main roster. And let's see how Kenta does and how much is the language barrier going to be a problem for him. I don't know. And if he's a success, maybe that'll open the door for WWE to sign more Japanese guys and actually put them in significant roles and not just use them for, comedy bits like they did with Jimmy Wang Yang or Kenzo Suzuki or anything like that. Not that they're the greatest talents in the world, but, you know, they weren't presented with a whole lot of respect either. So we'll see how Kenta does when he makes it to the main roster, and then we'll talk about future Japanese talents coming to the WWE. Of course, with the New Japan Wrestle Kingdom show being aired in America, that might be a way to have Japanese wrestling break into the American market. Who knows? That could be a nice gateway into something cool. So it'll be interesting to see what 2015 brings. Well, to be perfectly honest, after this last run of episodes, I think they're all fucking stupid. I did not like the last run of episodes at all, and the way the finale played out really made the whole 8-episode run feel completely pointless, and I really didn't like it. It's like, no, Mr. Horse from Ren and Stimpy. No, sir, I did not like it. I did not like it at all. No, sir. This is going to turn into a gigantic rant, which is why I deliberately saved this question for last, because this could go on for an hour about how much I hated this last season of The Walking Dead, or half season, or whatever. And like I said, this is going to be spoiler heavy, so if you don't want to have it spoiled for you, tune this out, turn it off. What I will say is that don't even bother watching it. If you haven't seen it, don't even bother. It's a complete waste of time. But anyway, they came into this season with a lot of hype. There were 3 big hanging story threads that, cliffhangers, if you will, coming into this season that had legitimate intrigue and mystery surrounding them, and people wanted to know, like, how they were going to turn out. One was the Terminus thing, and Rick's group being kidnapped by Terminus, who turned out to be cannibals, and, you know, how are they going to get out? Who are they going to kill? Who are the Terminus guys going to kill? Why do they eat people outside of the obvious, you know, food source, but in the zombie apocalypse? But, you know, just a lot of questions, a lot of excitement, and, you know, the characters, Rick's group, they were left in a very dangerous situation at the end of the season. So that was the biggest one that they left hanging coming into season 5. The second one is the DC mission. Abraham trying to get Eugene to DC, because apparently Eugene has the cure for the zombie apocalypse, and he can stop the dead from rising, and they need to get him to DC to make that happen. Okay. That's intriguing, that's interesting. Okay, fine. Number 3, who kidnapped Beth? Where is she? Is she even alive? What happened to Beth? Where is she? And all that stuff. All of those legitimately interesting mysteries or interesting story threads or something that things that could lead to something interesting down the road. And with all three of those things hanging unresolved coming into season 5, there was a lot of intrigue and a lot of excitement. I can honestly say that after watching all 8 episodes, they fucked up, all 3 of them. All 3 of them got fucked up royally. Starting with the Terminus thing, episode 1, which was the best episode of the season by far, but they burn Terminus to the ground, Rick's group. Carol comes in, saves the day, and, you know, all hell breaks loose, and they burn Terminus to the ground. So the bad guys don't have a home anymore. So right off the bat, Rick has defeated them, pretty much. They tried to give some backstory on why the Terminus people are the way they are, but they didn't really flesh it out all that much. And ultimately, it didn't amount to much of anything anyway. And then a couple episodes later, actually it was the next episode, I believe, it's revealed that the remaining survivors of Terminus are hunting down Rick's group. They kidnap Bob, and they eat his leg, which is really the height of their evil. That's really the biggest victim they claim as the villain, the quote-unquote main villains of the season. The biggest victim they claim is Bob's leg. They never are responsible for the death of anybody in Rick's group or anything other than Bob. And Bob, who winds up dead, he was going to die anyway because it's revealed that he was bit by a walker under very stupid circumstances. Hey, let's jump into that water pit that has walkers in it. Let's not actually kill the walkers before going into the water pit to get the food. No, we're just going to jump right in. Let's not actually kill the walkers first, even though we have guns. Okay, see again, Rick's group, they're fucking stupid. There's a lot of kind of that lazy writing where it's like the characters make really dumb decisions for the sake of creating drama, and that was probably the least offensive example of it in this season. And when I get into the mid-season finale, that's where all hell breaks loose on that front. But so there's that. Terminus, I mean, they're not even responsible for Bob's death. So the biggest thing they claimed was his leg. They tracked the group down to the church. Rick pulls a double cross, and they wind up mutilating the Terminus guys. So we're 3 episodes in, and already the so-called main bad guys of the season have been mutilated and defeated and killed, and at very little cost to Rick's group. They didn't really have to suffer all that much to get them out of the way. And I look at that, and it's like, they did get a season and a half out of the governor, and the governor was responsible for a lot of shit. He Walker bombed the prison, which was one of the coolest moments in the entire show. I do remember that. He's somewhat responsible for Andrea's death, although a lot of that was her own stupidity. It's like, look, stop talking to the guy and just try and grab the knife. Stop talking. So, okay, her dying was kind of her fault, but at the same time, the governor did create that situation. So, okay, we'll let him have that one. He killed Herschel. He was responsible for the death of the downfall of the prison and costing Rick's group their home. So Governor did a lot that ultimately, as a bad guy, he built up a lot of heat, shall we say. Let's use a wrestling terminology there. He built up a lot of heat before they ultimately took him down. And they got about a season and a half out of storylines out of him. And he was more of a complex character than the Terminus group. I felt like there was something there with the Terminus guys, but they never really fully fleshed it out. They explained that they turned the way they were because they were helping people initially, but this one group of guys came in and raped all the women and locked them up, but then they fought back and took back Terminus, and they decided, we're cannibals now because the world is a mean place and we got to eat people. I wish they had fleshed that out a little bit more. But whatever. I wish they had done more with the Terminus guys. It probably would have been more interesting if the Terminus guys had hunted them down and started picking them off one by one throughout the course of the season, and then lead to a big climax at the end. But they sort of rushed the Terminus thing to completion, and really, like, the Marauders got more than the Terminus guys did. And Terminus, there was so much mystery built into what Terminus is. The entirety of the second half of season 4 was built around trying to find Terminus and speculating on what it was, and then we got the answer in the mid-season finale, the season 4 finale, that it's not a very good place, and then it amounted to very little. Like I said, the biggest victim they claimed was Bob's leg, and a couple of no-name background characters, and one guy that Rick met many moons ago that ultimately amounted to nothing. So, they really didn't have much of an impact on the show, and that was kind of disappointing because I thought they were the big thing. They were the big bad guys. That was the big story thread coming into the season, and they resolved it so quickly. I was like, okay, I don't know why that is, but all right, sure. Then the next one, the DC mission. Let's talk about that. Even though technically they jumped into the Beth thing next, but there was one episode dedicated to the DC mission, and I'll just go ahead and talk about that next, because the Beth thing, that's where a lot of the rant is going to come in. DC mission had one episode dedicated to it. Abraham takes Eugene, I think her name is Rosita. Sorry, I don't read the comics, and I don't know all of their names off the top of my head. And then Glenn and Maggie, who are there for no other reason than to just have regular cast members along with that section of the group. They go up to DC, or they're on the way up to DC, and I don't even think they're out of Georgia yet. And Eugene spills the beans. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not really a scientist. I was just bullshitting to keep myself alive, so I have this bodyguard, Abraham, helping me out. And I was like, one episode? Really? Great. They had mentioned it last season, sure, but this was really the only episode that dedicated any kind of significant time to the DC mission. And if you really wanted to have, like, a huge impact from Eugene admitting that he was lying, to me, I was like, I feel like you should have waited until they got to DC. That would have made it more tragic, because it's like, we came all this way and you fucked us, you piece of shit. But now it's like, oh, well, now we can just turn around and go right back and meet up with Rick's gang. So it was really, it wasn't so much a DC mission as it was a DC detour. And again, I didn't feel like they maximized the potential of that storyline. The only thing they really got out of it was Abraham's backstory, and even that, I looked at that and I'm like, wow, his wife is really stupid. I mean, and this wasn't fully explained in the TV show, but apparently in the comics, which again, I haven't read the comics, so bear with me. Apparently what happens in the comics is that Abraham's family, his wife and kids, they get raped by friends of theirs as they're trying to survive the apocalypse. And Abraham goes apeshit on them and just kills them to protect his family, but his wife and kids see this vicious, monstrous side of him as he does so, and they don't want to be around him because they don't feel safe around him anymore. So they leave him in the middle of the night, and Abraham goes out to find them and finds that they only made it about 20 feet before they died. And it's like, oh wow, that's... A, you're fucking stupid for leaving him, and B, you're useless for not being able to make it more than 20 feet, or 50 feet, or whatever it was. But it's like, really? He saves you from the rapists, and you're scared of him? If I was his wife, I'd have been like, thank you, honey, for saving me from the bad people. I'm sorry I didn't jump in and help you. Is there any way I can help you murder these, horrible, rapey people? Again, rape was a common theme throughout this season, too, which, I don't know, kind of got overused a bit. And I get that rape sucks. I get that. I fully understand that. And rape is horrible and terrible, but far too often it gets used as a story point to add pain to make a female character's experience as horrible as possible just to make the male counterpart suffer more, if that makes any sense. I hope I explained that well, but it's like Abraham's family went through all of that just to add pain to Abraham and not so much them because they're not really important characters. The Terminus people, it added pain to them to kind of give a simplistic explanation for why they are the way they are, but ultimately they amounted to nothing anyway, so it didn't even matter. Stuff like that. But yeah, the DC mission ultimately didn't amount to very much, and it was like, okay, that's another storyline you kind of chucked to the wayside there. Alright, and apparently they're going to start heading to Alexandria next season, and my whole mindset is like, you were going to head up that way anyway. Because I live near DC, obviously, and Alexandria is not too far away. So wouldn't it have made more sense to have the whole DC mission stretched out to where they're headed to DC, and then when that turns out to be a bust, they wind up in Alexandria? Wouldn't that make more sense? I don't know. That's just me. But now the big one. The big one that was royally fucked up. The Beth storyline. Okay, so they rushed the Terminus thing. They got rid of those bad guys for the sake of doing this storyline, which was really the longest running one throughout the season. They dedicated a good 4 episodes to it. That's half the season. That's more than Terminus got. That's more than the DC mission got. So, this hospital storyline got a majority of the season's push and build. And it amounted to fucking nothing. Nothing! It amounted to just absolutely fucking nothing. And they stretched that fucker out, too, because, really, the 2 big episodes of the hospital story arc are the first one and the mid-season finale, and the 2 episodes in between that they did to build it really were just glorified filler, because they really just... anything they could do to stretch this fucker out to 8 episodes. And, all that time spent on it, and it amounted to fucking nothing. And I felt like I wasted my time. And the Beth thing, where she was, who kidnapped her and everything, all legitimate questions, legitimately interesting questions, and could have made for a good story arc. It did not, and it turned out to be a waste of time. Let me count the ways. Number one... And this is huge, because, alright, you had the Terminus guys who were these really interesting characters, at least on the onset. And it turns out they were cannibals, so they were scary. And kind of fucked up and weird. And I wanted to spend more time with them, because I felt like they were more interesting. And I especially felt that way after seeing the hospital bad guys, because, as it turns out, Beth was kidnapped by police officers who are running... They've taken shelter in this hospital where they kidnap people and force them into indentured servitude. Because they said, oh, we really saved you, so now you have to work for us. And Beth is basically a slave with all the other kidnappees in this place. And the bad cops are running the asylum. Dawn is their leader, and I use that term very loosely. And the problem with all of these characters, all these cop characters... I still have no fucking clue. And again, 4 episodes dedicated to this story arc. I cannot fucking tell you with any certainty how the fuck this hospital works. I mean, so apparently, what we're led to believe is that these cops, they drive around in these cars looking for supplies, which, okay, that makes sense. But they also hit people with their cars. I'm assuming that's what they did to Beth, because they did it to Carol. They hit her with their car, and then took her to the hospital to get her fixed up, presumably with the intention of turning her into one of their indentured servants. Seems like a waste of resources, seems wildly impractical, but I'm going to assume they did the same thing to Beth, even though Beth was kidnapped off screen. I'm going to assume that they were just driving around the woods, looking for somebody to hit with their car just so they could kidnap him and force him into indentured servitude. Because Beth woke up with a broken arm, and I think she had some scars and shit, and it's like, okay, that's kind of weird that you would put that much effort in just to getting slaves. I mean, I would feel like that's a waste of resources, because then you have to use all your medical supplies to try and help save the people, you know, and if you're going to hit them with your car, you might as well just leave them there. What's the difference, you know? And it's like, I think back to last season when Beth got kidnapped, somebody left that food there for Daryl and Beth to eat. Was it them? Did they leave that trap just for the sake of hopefully luring Daryl away, just so they could have the opportunity to hit Beth with their car and then take her to the hospital to get her fixed up? And I don't fucking know. I have so many questions about how how bad guys work. It really doesn't make any goddamn sense. And then the actual the chain of command, the structure of how it all operates. Dawn is in charge, supposedly, but there are these bad cops that rape people, because again, rape is a common theme here, and the rapey cops are the bad ones that abuse people and rape the women, and they tried to rape Beth, but they didn't succeed. More on that later. And all of that shit. I was like, okay, but there are also good cops that don't like what the bad cops are doing. The bad cops don't like Dawn, even though Dawn lets them do whatever they want. And the good cops don't like Dawn because she lets the bad cops do whatever they want. And Dawn is a control freak who somehow holds power over all of them. I don't know what exactly. That's never adequately explained, why they even listen to her in the first place, and how she keeps control over everything, or what her authority is. I mean, again, looking back to other villains, you have the governor, you have the guy who led the Terminus group, I forget his name, the guy who led the Marauders, forget his name too, I'm sorry, but you can see why those guys were in charge. I don't get why the cops even listened to Dawn. I don't get why the good cops didn't save the if there are good cops, which again, we never fully found out if the good cops were even all that good to begin with, and that really pays dividends at the end here, which, again, I'll get to that. The bad guys just made no sense. It just did not make any goddamn sense. And it's like, well, everybody uses everybody to have some sort of power within this society that we built inside of this hospital. And I don't get it. I don't understand it. And apparently there was some kind of power struggle going on between Dawn and the bad cops and Dawn and the good cops. And at this point, I'm just kind of like, how have they not all killed each other before Beth even became a factor in this storyline? Because it feels like this is a powder keg that should have exploded a long time ago. But, okay, sure. Basically, the bad guys don't make any sense. Problem number 2, and a lot of people commented on this, so it's not just me. A lot of Walking Dead fans and viewers commented on this. Beth and Maggie, who are supposed to be sisters, although I will forgive you for forgetting that point, for the reason that Maggie never, at any point, tries to help her sister. They get separated from each other after the prison falls, and then Maggie immediately goes into this hell-bent crusade. I have to find my husband. I have to find Glenn. I have to find my dick. That dick that I love so fucking much. I have to find that, and I will move heaven and earth to find that, and I will manipulate Bob and Sasha to get that. My sister, they never... And it's like, okay, if she... I could accept that Maggie would assume that Beth is dead, if she wasn't so gung-ho about finding Glenn. It's like, why would you assume that Glenn is alive and Beth is dead? Why? I mean, why? Exactly. To me, if you all get separated, I would assume, either they're both dead or they're both alive. Now, if she had tried to put the same energy into finding Beth that she did with Glenn, I would buy it. But they didn't do that. Or if she assumed that both of them were dead, I would have bought that too. But the fact that she was so gung-ho about finding Glenn and did not even give a crap about trying to find her sister, which a lot of people commented on, and it was like, oh, well, shrug shoulders, okay. And that really hurt the ending of the mid-season finale, which, oh god, I've got a lot to go into when I get into that. It's all building to that, of course. So there's that. That was also a problem. Number 3, again, going back to what I said about the villains not making any sense, and this is where I'm going to start transitioning into the mid-season finale. Carol, at one point, while her and Daryl are looking for Beth inside Atlanta and trying to find the hospital that or they don't even know it's a hospital at this point, but they're trying to find her, and Carol gets hit with a car by the oh-so-despicable cops, yet wildly impractical cops. And they take her into the hospital or whatever, and she's injured. And this leads into a moment in the mid-season finale where there's the big standoff, the prisoner trade, where the cops are going to trade Beth and Carol for 2 of their cops that were captured by Rick's group. Okay. And by the end of the episode, Carol is not in that wheelchair anymore. She gets up out of that wheelchair pretty damn quick, to which I say... So getting hit with a car, I guess, meant nothing. I mean, no broken bones, no concussion, no nothing. I mean, she got up out of that wheelchair pretty quick at the end of that episode, and I think she even walked out of the hospital when it was over, so what was the point of her getting hit by the car? It didn't make any... It amounted to nothing. I don't understand. None of this made any fucking sense. Anyway, continuing on, so yeah, Carol getting hit by the car amounted to nothing, meant nothing, and was just a pointless story detour, as it turns out. And now we're getting into the real meat and potatoes of the climax of the season, this big prisoner trade here, which obviously was the big talking point coming out of the season. This whole scene made absolutely no sense, and I feel like a broken record here, but made no sense at all. Number 1, and this goes into where Rick's group of characters, how they're fucking stupid. Why would they agree to hold the trade inside the hospital? I mean, you're going to walk into enemy territory and agreed to hold the prisoner trade there. When earlier in that same episode, they'd showed them at, I think it was a parking garage, where they had snipers on the cops so Rick could deliver his message, and I'm just sitting there like, why didn't they just hold the trade there? It's a neutral site. They can have snipers on the cops to ensure that everything goes the way it's supposed to go, in case they pull anything stupid. And if they do pull anything stupid, they can be taken down at a heartbeat anyway, so cool beans. Seems like you'd have a better standing in that parking garage than you would making the trade in the goddamn hospital, where you don't know exactly how many people there are. You don't know... I mean, I guess Noah could have told them, but at the same time, it's like... they could have easily jumped you from behind or something, or pulled some sort of trap, and yet you walked right into the lion's den. Okay! Just gonna throw my hands up, pretend that makes sense. Sure, fine, whatever. So there's that. And then it just kept descending into more stupid. The next big stupid thing is that they do the trade. Rick lets the 2 cops go. Dawn lets Beth and Carol go. And then right away, Dawn is like, Oh, by the way, we'll take Noah, too, because Noah was a prisoner at the hospital who Beth helped escape. And Dawn is like, yeah, I want Noah back, too, so you have to give me Noah. And Rick starts flipping out, like, look, the deal is done. You can't have this. You can't have it. And then Noah's like, no, I'll go. And then Beth gets in between him and all this other stuff. And I'm just waiting for somebody in Rick's group to go, all right, you want Noah? Or else what? I hate to quote Transformers the movie here. I mean, the good movie, the animated movie from 1986. Unicron, Orson Welles, voiced by the late great Orson Welles. Unicron's line to Megatron, your bargaining posture is highly dubious. Dawn, she let Beth and Carol go. What leverage does she have over Rick's group to go, okay, I'll take that guy too? And it's like, and you're a cop, for fuck's sake. Don't you know how to negotiate or know what not to do in a tense situation? In a situation where you got two factions on each side of the hallway with guns drawn to make sure that everything goes the way it's supposed to go. And she pulls that shit with absolutely no leverage. None at all, because she let her two prisoners go. So, alright, if she held a gun to Beth's head and said, give me Noah, or something like that, or if she revealed that she had gunmen behind Rick's group, which again makes them stupid for holding the trade inside the hospital in the first place, okay, fine, but she had none of that, and it's like, why are they even listening to her? Because I would have, if I were in that situation, if I were in Rick's group, I'd have been like, or else what? What are you going to do? Start shooting? Because if you start shooting, my guys are going to start shooting, and a bunch of people in this hallway are going to wind up dead, and a lot of people are going to be lost. And guess what, Dawn? You're in the middle of the hallway. I'm pretty sure you're going to be one of the first ones to go. So, is that what you want? Are you crazy or stupid enough to do that? Again, maybe Dawn's crazy or stupid enough to do that. I don't know. Her character didn't make any goddamn sense, so who the fuck knows? I don't know. I don't know anything about what's going on here. I don't know why Dawn pulled the power play that she did, thinking that it was going to work. I don't know why Rick's group gave into the power play like she had just pulled the mother of all trump cards. Again, doesn't make any sense. And I'm just sitting there watching this, just utterly just flabbergasted, trying to make sense out of any of this. And I can come up with no answers. None of this is making any sense. And then Beth gets in between, and this is the big one. Beth gets in between Dawn and Noah and stabs Dawn for trying to take Noah. And okay, up to this point, we've been led to believe that Beth is a smart girl. Relatively smart. Why would she stab Dawn in the shoulder, of all places? I mean, in the first hospital episode, they showed her getting some pretty good headshots on some walkers. So I assume she knows. And, her father was a medical expert or whatever, so I assume she knows how the human body at least somewhat works, Why would she stab in the shoulder? Why not the heart? Why not the neck? Why not the head? Why not anywhere else but the fucking shoulder? I don't know. It doesn't make any fucking sense. I don't understand. But I have an even bigger question than that. Why the hell would Beth even stab her in the first place? Now, again, big spoilers. Beth stabs Dawn. Dawn's gun goes off, kills Beth, headshot, boom, Beth falls down dead. And this is where a lot of people got upset, especially fans of the character. And before I elaborate any further, let me just start off by saying, this is all coming from somebody who liked Beth as a character. I did like her as a character. I know a lot of guys did not like her. I know a lot of girls liked her because of the whole shipping aspect with Daryl, which to me was kind of creepy because of the age difference. But whatever. I like Beth I'm not a shipper in any way, shape, or form. I take that back. I am a friend shipper. I wasn't interested in the idea of Daryl and Beth becoming romantically involved, but I did like the brother-sister aspect. That was more appealing to me and more interesting to me, that Daryl was passing his knowledge of tracking and hunting and all that stuff down to a younger person. And that to me was more interesting. And that was fun, and I did enjoy that. But I did like Beth as a character. I thought the actress brought like a legitimate kind of sweetness and genuine nature to it. I don't know. I also thought she was kind of a plucky little underdog. Because, in the zombie apocalypse, it's easy to see how somebody like Daryl or somebody like Michonne or Rick, a cop, a sword expert, and a hunter, how they can all survive in the zombie apocalypse. But Beth, it's like, all right, how does a kind of a soft, singer, artistic type, how would she react in the zombie apocalypse? And in a lot of ways, she was actually the most developed character, except for maybe Carol. She's probably the most changed and developed character from where she started to where she ended, although they fucked up her ending, which I'll elaborate on that. But she was probably the most evolved character from where she started to where she ended. And to me, it's interesting to see how on the face, how somebody who's weak can survive an environment like this. And I thought they were developing her. And the one thing about the hospital story arc that I did like was her. I thought the ways she would stand up to Dawn, even though she knew she was going to get smacked in the face for it. The ways she would stand up to the rapey cops, even though the rapey cops were cliche and stupid. How brave she got and how smart she got and how she came up with this whole plan to get Carol the miracle drug that would help her save her from a car accident. I guess that same miracle drug must have healed all her bones and healed her concussions and any internal bleeding too. And that's how she was able to get out of that wheelchair so quick. But anyway, the one thing about the hospital story arc that I did enjoy was her character and the way it developed. So we're at this point now. She takes the shot, stabs Dawn, and it costs her her life. To me, that completely betrayed the development of Beth's character because I believe that she would be reckless in regards to her own safety. I don't believe that she would endanger everybody else because by doing what she did, in her last act, she endangered every single person in that hallway, especially her friends. And that to me just didn't gel with me. I was like, no, that's wrong. No, she wouldn't do that. Because, she was there when the prison fell. Her father's death basically jump-started a firefight that ultimately led to the fall of the prison and a bunch of deaths. I would think she would know, hey, whoever takes the first shot here, it's going to cause a goddamn Wild Wild West shootout, and a bunch of people are going to wind up dead, including myself and people I care about. So, just dumb. That's not a smart thing to do. And I felt like that was out of character for her to do that. I felt like she would have an understanding that by doing that, she is endangering all the people that she cares about. So, that didn't gel with me at all. And to me, it made no sense. And, and it's the problem actually works twofold because not only that, Dawn, talking about getting heat on your bad guy, Dawn doesn't even get the heat for killing her because the gun went off accidentally, so Beth killed Beth. It's like Brett screwed Brett. Well, Beth killed Beth, basically, and it's not even really Dawn's fault that she's dead, so the villain doesn't even appropriately get the heat for it, and Daryl shoots her for it, but it's like, it's not even that satisfying because it's not like it was even Dawn's fault to begin with. Now, I would buy that Beth would jump in front of Noah if she thought that Dawn was going to shoot him. I believe that she would try to stop Dawn, wrestle the gun out of her hand if she thought Dawn was going to pull a double cross or something, and then just get shot in the crossfire. I can buy that, but I don't buy that she would just willy-nilly take the first shot and endanger everybody. That makes no sense to me, and it really takes the tragedy out of her death because it just kind of makes her look like an idiot. And actually, in the end, Beth and Dawn both dying, it makes it look like, oh, it's just two idiots canceling each other out. It's not, it's not like a hero sacrificing herself for the group and then a villain suffering a downfall in a satisfying manner. It's just two idiots that canceled each other out. That's basically my point. And I'm not against Beth dying. That's not my point. I would even argue that they could have killed her before this, and it would have been better. One of my first speculations on where she was and where they took her, and who took her, I thought in the season 4 finale, it was going to be revealed that Terminus took her, and she was going to be the first victim, and they butchered her and barbecued her and served her to Maggie and Glenn when they first got there. I thought that's what they were going to do. It would have been gross. It would have been disgusting, and you wouldn't have gotten the development of Beth that you got in season 5, but they chucked that out the window anyway, so what's the difference? And at least it gets heat on the Terminus bad guys, so it would have ultimately meant more, because like I said, the hospital bad guys didn't make any sense, and Beth's character development was thrown in a garbage disposal, so meant for nothing. It all amounted to nothing. I also thought maybe they could have killed her at the end of the first hospital episode after she saved Noah, so at least her final act would have been a heroic one, because she saved herself to make sure that Noah got away. I don't know if Noah's all that valuable to the group, because again, apparently what he's going to do is lead them to Alexandria, which, if you hadn't pulled the plug on the DC mission, you could have transitioned to Alexandria anyway, so Noah kind of feels superfluous. So, whatever. But in any case, you could have done something where you didn't know if she was alive coming out of the first hospital episode, and when the group breaks into the hospital at the end of the mid-season finale, they find her like beaten to death or whatever, and that the bad guys found out what she did, and they just beat her and slaughtered her or did whatever, and then the good guys go crazy and just kill everybody inside or whatever, for Beth. Whatever. But it's just, there are other, basically my point is you could have killed her off screen before this, and it would have been better than what you did. Because ultimately it feels like, and to use another wrestling terminology, it feels like Beth got a Dolph Ziggler push, where they kind of tricked us into thinking she was going to be something good, and then they ultimately just threw it away, and nothing came of it. And I wouldn't have been opposed to them keeping her alive, because, like I said, the hospital story arc was stupid, but I enjoyed her character, and it's like, man, I'd like to see this character in better storylines. Nope. I mean, she didn't even get to sacrifice herself for Carol, really, because, Carol had already been given over. She had already, been handed over to the good guys, so she was already saved, really, and of course she got out of that wheelchair pretty quick. So there was, no, sacrifice or any, I don't know, it was really bad. It was just really, really bad. And again, I'm not upset that they killed a character I like. I welcome that. When I was 4 years old, I watched Optimus Prime die, so after that, I can handle anything. But, if you're gonna kill a character I like, could you make it count? Could you make it good? Could you make it make sense and actually make it tragic so that it either adds heat to a bad guy or feels like some sort of grand finale? Because really, a major character death should be either a good payoff or it should be the start, the genesis of something. It's not the genesis of anything, because the hospital story arc is closed, over and done with. The quote-unquote good cops are in charge of the hospital now. I guess all the slaves are going to be okay, although I don't know how good the good cops are. They decided not to shoot back after Dawn had gotten shot. It's almost like, ding dong, you killed the Wicked Witch. We're okay now. We're good. You can trust us. I'm like, yeah, I'd buy that. Sure. Okay. I'm sure all those prisoners are going to trust them, and everything's just going to be hunky-dory. Oh, and there was no payoff to the doctor at all whatsoever. Beth was fully ready to kill him. And again, building into what I said, I believe that Beth would be reckless in regards to her own safety, because at the end of the first hospital episode, she was ready to kill the doctor right out there. And I believe in that situation, she would be like, all right, my friends can't find me. There's nothing I can do. I'm stuck here, so I might as well go down swinging. Okay, I can buy that. But what stopped her? She saw Carol getting wheeled in. It's like, oh, well, I need to be smart and, keep the gun tucked away, and, not go out guns blazing just yet. There's obviously there's a way that we can get out of this now, and I need to make sure that Carol stays alive. So, again, what they did there at the end of the mid-season finale with her character just didn't gel right with me at all. And, it took her character development, just tossed her out the window. So she didn't necessarily save the hospital prisoners. She didn't necessarily die saving Noah, because she'd already done that, and all she did basically was commit suicide. And oh well, so all that got tossed away for nothing. But the gunfight that she almost caused got avoided. So yay, I guess. And wow, that was. So after all that, you get to this moment at the end, which should have been a powerful image and should have been this really tragic thing, where Daryl's carrying Beth's dead body out of the hospital and Maggie just walks in just in time. Or well, she's too late and just breaks down crying when she sees Beth's body. And it's like, All right, Maggie didn't give a shit about Beth until this episode, so I feel nothing there. Beth died for nothing, so I don't feel anything. I'm both confused and I'm tickled with laughter at how badly they fucked all of this up. It's just because it's just a confusing mess, and I don't understand any of this. And I'm thinking back to all the other times The Walking Dead killed a major character, and I can't remember one that they fucked up as badly as this. I really can't. Even Andrea, who I hated, by the way. And if I had to pick a character that I hated more than anything in The Walking Dead, it was Andrea in the show. She was awful, and that's another discussion for another time. But her death, at least it gave the governor some heat, even though a lot of it was her being stupid and actually trying to talk to Milton, I think his name was, rather than just trying to get herself untied and get the fuck out of there. So there's that. But Dale, who got attacked in the middle of that field by the ninja walker that he didn't hear coming somehow, some way. But at least it kind of like had this thing where Carl got to feel guilty about being responsible for Dale's death. So at least there was something. Which Carl, who by the way did nothing this season. I mean, they've spent so much time with him, and he amounted to doing absolutely nothing this whole season. But whatever. I'm trying to think of some other... T-Dog! The personification of background noise, that is T-Dog, got to go out like a hero, so he got a better death than Beth did. Lori, who everybody hated, got a more powerful death than Beth did, who had been this, I thought, well-developed character, and then they just kind of... I mean, it was so bad. Again, going back to wrestling, I started thinking... Did the actress piss somebody off? Did something happen here that led to this? Because this is terrible. This is just really bad. And it reeks of a last-minute decision almost. Because I feel like, and especially when I watched the talk show right after the episode, and they had the actress on there. I'm sorry, I forget her name. The only actor I know by name on the show is Norman Reedus, and that's only because I'm a Boondock Saints junkie. I love that movie. Sequel, but whatever. But I love the first movie. But other than that, I don't really know the actors' names. But she was on there, and she was crying the entire time. And she didn't really... I kind of get the feeling they didn't tell her until very late in the process that they were going to do what they did. And it does kind of reek of a last-minute decision almost. But, yeah, seeing her crying on the talk show was actually sadder than the episode itself, because the episode was so poorly written and so poorly executed, it didn't make any goddamn sense. It basically ruined the entire season. Because when all of that went down, I'm just sitting there like, the Terminus thing got thrown away, the DC mission got thrown away, all for this storyline that amounted to nothing. Right there. Right there. It was just fucking terrible. And, yeah, it's just... I mean, it was just terrible. They had so much hype coming into this season and so much goodwill built up, and then they turn around and just fucked it all up. I mean, I don't think it's going to hurt their viewership at all. I'm sure they're still going to continue to do huge numbers when they come back in February. But, I mean, for me personally, this is like... This might be a shark jumper. I mean, this could be like the end of the show for me personally. I mean, if they don't turn things around in the next run of episodes, I might be done with The Walking Dead because, I mean, this is just awful. I mean, just really, really bad. And, you know, like I said, they took a character I liked, completely fucked up her character, and it was funny, going back to the talk show, the host, Chris Hardwick, he mentioned, I thought Beth had a great arc. I'm like, well, she almost did. They fucked it up at the end, but hey, what can you do? And again, it takes a lot of the tragedy out of it when all it would have taken to avoid that whole situation is for one character to use their brain. Just one. I mean, if Dawn hadn't realized, oh, hey, I've given up all my bargaining posture, maybe I shouldn't be a bitch and call for Noah. Or, hey, maybe somebody in Rick's group should have called her on her bullshit and told her she had no power. Or, hey, maybe Beth shouldn't have been a complete moron and fucked the whole thing up. Or maybe Rick's group shouldn't have been idiots and held the trade inside the hospital. Or maybe they should have gone with Rick's original plan, which was much better, which is basically go in there covertly and take all the cops out one by one and get them out that way, and they could have potentially saved all of the prisoners and not just Beth and Carol. But, whatever. But, you know, everybody took a stupid pill, apparently, in this last episode, and it was also bad. It was just really, really bad. And I've heard that there are a lot of fans of Beth who have started like an online petition to get her back on the show, and apparently like Facebook's communities and Tumblr communities and all this other stuff have popped up saying Beth deserved better or whatever and all this other stuff. And some people are making fun of it, but at the same time I'm kind of like, look, they feel cheated. I feel cheated. I felt like I wasted 8 hours of my life watching this whole season, and because nothing amounted to anything, and it just felt like a gigantic waste of time. I mean, they could have killed Beth a year ago and they'd be in the same exact position that they're in now. And going back to what I said earlier, it's like a major character death should be the start of the genesis of something or a payoff to something. It's not going to start anything because all they got out of it is that Maggie's going to be upset because she finally remembered that she had a sister who is now dead. The funniest picture I saw, somebody sent me this after the episode aired. It was a picture of Maggie with the caption, "Oh, my sister died? Huh, I forgot I had one of those." That's really... Yeah, so there's that whole thing. And, Daryl needed to cry for the 80th time because, man pain. Again, going back to what I said earlier about the suffering of female character being used to enhance a male character, the term fridging really comes to mind. And it really comes across here because they basically just threw Beth into the wood chipper just so Daryl can cry again. It's like, oh, okay, and, to make no sense of anything else. And... so it's not going to be the genesis of anything significant, and it's not a good payoff because, like I said, the prisoners of the hospital weren't saved. The hospital storyline never made any sense to begin with, so it's not a good payoff to anything, and Beth's character arc amounted to nothing, so it wasn't a good anything. And compare that to Arrow, and I won't spoil anything with Arrow, but Season 3, there was a significant death that happened pretty early in the season. And the entire season is built around a storyline trying to figure out how this death happened, who's behind it, why did it happen, and all of the characters' responses to it. And they've gotten pretty decent character development and storylines out of this one death. That's an effective way to use a major character death. Walking Dead didn't do that, not in this instance, anyway. It just reeked of, like, and really all of my questions can be answered by the fact that they had to get that mid-season finale death. They had to get that because they do it every mid-season finale. They did it with Sophia. They did it with Herschel last year. They did it with, I think it was Lori, the mid-season finale death in 3. I don't remember, but it's become kind of a tradition with them that they have to have that mid-season finale death, and they were going to get it whether it made any sense or not. And Daryl needs to cry because the women love Daryl and they love him. They love him even more when he's in pain. So we need to get that. And it was more about getting those things rather than telling a good story and giving off good payoffs, because it felt like they had to get that death whether it made any sense or not, or whether it was satisfying or not. They just had to shock people. They Russo'd us. How many times have I tied this into fucking wrestling? It's really crazy. I've already compared Beth Green to Dolph Ziggler. Yeah, I did that. Fuck, I don't give a fuck. Do whatever you want. I don't care. But anyway, it just reeks of something that they felt like they had to do because it's kind of a tradition that they do the mid-season finale death. They couldn't have killed her earlier when it would have actually made more sense, at least, and probably would have been more satisfying, because you need to have that big death in the mid-season finale. So, you couldn't kill her a year ago in Terminus because reasons. I don't know. Maybe they didn't even know what they were going to do with the whole who kidnapped her storyline yet. I don't know. But, the entirety of Season 5, thus far, the first half of it anyway, was just a mess. From the rushing of the Terminus thing to conclusion, to the DC thing, the DC mission, they pulled the plug on that, to the introduction of Father Gabriel, who was an absolutely insufferable and useless and annoying character. I talked about how much I hate Andrea. In the few episodes that Gabriel has been in, I think I already hate him more. He is absolutely just cowardly and useless and awful, and at this point in the zombie apocalypse, I'm just kind of like, there's no way that motherfucker would still be alive. I don't buy that dude could survive that long on his own. I don't. I really don't. This doesn't gel with me. It doesn't make any sense. I don't like this character. I hate him. So there's that as well. And then the whole Beth hospital story arc thing, which never made any sense. And the one good thing that came out of it, which was best character development, they tossed it in the wood chipper and destroyed it and ruined it, and apparently pissed a lot of people off in the process. But yeah, it was just bad writing. I mean, this is just bad. It's awful. This whole season just amounted to nothing. It was a waste of time. I hated it. And all the characters came off looking stupid. Why? Again, they're going to come back in February. I hope they turn things around. I hope, although I'm not very hopeful, because what is there to look forward to? They're going to go to Alexandria, which, again, if you hadn't pulled the plug on the DC mission, they would have been heading up that way anyway. Whatever. Morgan's going to join up with the group, which, okay, cool, but, you know, I mean, I guess that means Tyrese is living on borrowed time, because there's no way they're going to have 3 black people, 3 black men, anyway, surviving on the show at the same time. That's why Bob was killed, I'm convinced. They introduced Noah. It's like, oh, well, Bob's dead, and Tyrese, he's living on borrowed time, because they've introduced Noah, they introduced Father Gabriel, and Morgan's gonna be coming back, so it's like, oh, Tyrese, things not looking so good for you. If Tyrese makes it past episode 3 of the next run, I'll be shocked. I'll just say that. But yeah, even with Morgan coming in, there's something they could have done there. What if, you know, Daryl had taught Beth how to do all this tracking and hunting stuff? What if Beth had escaped from the hospital and then tracked the group down and run into Morgan and they head up to Alexandria together? They could have gotten something out of that. I don't know. I mean, it's like, literally, they could have done anything with that whole story arc and it would have been better. They could have shot Beth out of a cannon and had her hit a brick wall, and it would have been more satisfying than what they did, because at least it would have been bizarre. At least it would have been, you know, ridiculous, and it would have been or maybe intentionally funny. I don't know, but at least it would have been like, I was like, all right, they thought outside the box on that one. But going back to all the online petitions and everything, and you know, all how upset people are over that, and people have made fun of them, but you know, again, they feel cheated, and you know, I mean, they can't bring Beth back. I mean, that's kind of one of the things I do respect about the show, is that when a character's dead, they're dead. I mean, unless they come back as a walker, which is still dead. Game of Thrones, I respect that about that show too, where you know, when characters die, they stay dead, and I hate it when death has no consequence. I mean, DBZ, I make fun of DBZ for that all the time. It's like nobody's ever really died in DBZ. They just kind of go to another plane of existence until the Dragon Balls conveniently bring them back. So, you know, they can't bring Beth back. Although, I will say, the last episode was so poorly written and so horribly executed, and the death of Beth made so little sense that if they came back next season and said the whole thing was a dream, I would buy it. Because it's like, oh, no wonder nothing made any sense. It was all a dream. Okay, so, yeah, Season 5 of The Walking Dead was shit. It was shit. It was awful. Terrible. I'm going to quote Orson Welles again. Meaningless. Awful. Unrewarding. This is shit. You know that. Which, if you don't know what I'm referencing, the outtake tape of Orson Welles, we know a remote farm in Lincolnshire, where Mrs. Brisberry, I forget the name, but Mrs. Brisberry grows frozen peas there, or whatever. And sorry, I'm losing my voice, but you know, if you haven't listened to that outtake tape, go ahead and do so. It's awesome, and it's one of my favorite things ever. But yeah, not one of my favorite things ever is Season 5 of The Walking Dead, which may have, I mean, this might have been the shark jumping season, at least for me personally, because I mean, wow. So much of that was fucked up, and if you haven't seen Season 5 yet, don't even waste your time. It's a waste of time. I think so. It was just a complete waste of time, and I feel sorry for everybody that, you know, like myself, who sat through and watched the whole thing. So, end of rant. I'm done. Hopefully I answered that question for you. But yeah, we're done. Moving on. Phew. I made it through this video. I gotta be honest with you guys. I don't know if you can tell from my voice or the fact that I've been coughing the entire time, but I was fully ready to do this video, and then the morning that, because I had it written down in my schedule that I was gonna allow this block of time on Friday and Saturday to film the video, and I woke up Friday morning with a sore throat and just congested as fuck, and I was like, oh god. And I felt so awful that I actually considered postponing the question and answer video until 2015 because I was like, because if I put it off any longer, I'm not going to have any time to do it with the holidays and everything. So it's going to have to be just postponed until 2015. But I decided I was just going to power through and do it because I didn't want to do that to you guys, and I would have felt guilty if I did. So I was like, all right, I'll just power through this. I'm going to feel like shit doing it. And I still don't feel well, but I did it, and I made it, and what a way to go out in 2014. What a way. My last video of the year, and it was a Herculean task on my part to get this thing done. But now it's all over. Thank you guys for sending in your questions. I really enjoyed answering them, if you couldn't tell. I mean, they were really good questions, actually, and I really... that was also another incentive to do it. It's like, well, at least the questions I'm getting are sparking ideas in my head and stuff, and they're things that I want to talk about and elaborate on. So that's all great. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Hope I didn't sound too bad. And thank you to everyone who's been supporting me, and my new subscribers and everything, and all my old subscribers and everybody who's been watching my videos all year long. I do appreciate the support and all the kind comments that you all leave on these videos. And just know that I do enjoy doing this, and I do like doing these question and answer videos and interacting with you guys and doing all that stuff. It's a lot of fun for me. But that is all I have for you. For the rest of the year, pretty much. This is my last video of the year. There is going to be, tacked on at the very end of this video, there is a Wrestling's Best and Worst Awards of 2014, something that I threw together, and it's poorly edited, and it's terrible, but at least you'll know what I thought were the best and the worst of 2014. So I thought about making that, filming that as part of this video, but again, my voice is just so bad that it's just kind of like a picture slideshow that I edited together real quick. So, yeah, that's all I've got for now. So, once again, thank you everybody for all the support. Thank you to those that send in questions, and it's greatly appreciated. I hope you all are having a good holiday season. To all of you, I wish a good Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Hope you all have a good new year, and I will see you all in 2015. I am going to go hibernate, basically, and just recover from this. I will sound much better when you see me next. But until then, y'all aren't going to see me until 2015, bitches, so peace out.